I am so happy today to be here with Julia Brehm. She is a nutritionist and has studied many different areas of science, biology, biochemistry, and she has completed her dissertation and will soon have her PhD by Zoom. So we're taking it all online these days, everybody. So everybody cheer for her in the upcoming weeks in microbiology. But her passion is in nutrition. And so I'm so happy to have Julia here to talk with us about the whole food plant-based diet, which a lot of people can feel is very intimidating or not for them. And so I wanted to have a conversation about how it doesn't have to be intimidating, how you can try it on for size and see how it feels, implement it in phases, really celebrate the win. So I'm really excited to have Julia here to kind of have a chat with us. And if this is something you feel like exploring, maybe this will help you feel a little bit more empowered to bring it into your life. Julia, thanks for carving out a little bit of time on the other side of the pond.
No problem. I'm happy to be here.
How long ago did you decide that you wanted to pursue this diet?
Well, I mean, it's a long story because whole food plant-based can be broken down in a few philosophies. And actually, my mother was already a whole foodist, but not a veganist. So she was a vegetarian, and we did like this whole food part where we ate whole flour and no sugar. So I had a sugar-free childhood. Yay for me. But that didn't go so well. So I learned a lot about how to not do a sugar-free childhood because we just didn't have good alternatives. My mother just cut it out. She doesn't have a sweet tooth, so it wasn't hard on her. But I have a sweet tooth, so I know how sugar-free can be done wrong. And I had a phase in my life where I ate way too much sugar. So I already have this background, and I went sugar-free again like a year before I got pregnant, just because I felt it had to be done because I wasn't feeling great during my PhD time. And then I started studying nutrition, first personally and then professionally. And it really just went in phases because in the nutrition, there's a lot of like ways to go and a lot of like layers to unwrap until you get to this whole food plant-based core. At least it's for me, it's the core. So I tried out a lot of different things from low carb to keto. Yes, I did keto. And then I went to this whole food plant-based thing where I told my husband, I've heard that oil, that was basically the part. We went vegan before we went whole food. And I was like talking to my husband in the kitchen. It was in the kitchen. I've heard that oil could possibly be unhealthy. And he was like, no way. And I was like, yeah, well, I've heard it, and let's look into it a little bit. And I know, like, the next week I tried an oil-free dish, and it tasted horrible. It really didn't taste good. So I had to look up a lot of recipes, and then it started tasting good. And actually, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to do the shout out, but Forks Over Knives, the app, they have really good recipes for that. So it started tasting good again, and then after we noticed it can taste good without oil, we started to feel the first differences. We started losing weight on places where we never lost that weight. It was like always this belly fat that we didn't lose. It was so stubborn, and it suddenly just melted away. We didn't eat less. We mostly even ate more, and we didn't get sick in that winter, so we had like no colds. All of the people around us were like getting ill, and we were like, well, I had a scratch in my neck, but then it went away, and I'm golden. So then we started to notice that it really does make a difference. And when I went into, we went vegan because I read the China study from Dr. Campbell. Probably a lot of you have heard of him. He's like a pop star in nutrition. And then I know I came along this second pop star, Dr. Esselstyn, who actually showed that heart disease is not a thing that should happen. And when I started to realize that most of the diseases that we're facing, and it like just one domino after the other fell down when I looked into it, I noticed how big impact this can have. And I was like, I can't keep this for myself. I have to bring it out to the world. And yeah, so I've been trying now to convince people that the whole food plant-based diet can be very, very delicious and good for you. And yeah, even prevent a lot of the diseases we're all afraid of.
And that's
so
the one thing that I point out about recognizing stress and actually taking action to recognize we don't have to carry as much stress as we do, because it's another factor underlying a lot of these chronic diseases that we all have. And, you know, people want a silver bullet, one solution that's going to keep them from getting cancer. And it really is a lifestyle. There are so many contributing factors, and diet is definitely one of them. And I love that you're, you know, willing to admit, and it helps you empathize with people who are starting that transition, that it didn't taste good to start. And part of it is, you know, you didn't have the right recipes yet, and now you got some like favorites and refined some to help people with that transition. But it's also a matter of like giving yourself grace until you can change your taste buds, right? People expect something really rich or really satisfying. I mean, our brains are wired to crave sugar and fat, and so
but that goes away. That's the good, that's the good thing. After a while, it will taste too oily, it will taste too sweet, and you're gonna go, how did I ever enjoy this before? So it takes like about 3 months, más o menos. And then, I mean, I know that we started, I mean, we started, we didn't take it too hard on ourselves, so we tried out a lot, and we were like, I mean, I'm gluten-free because I'm sensitive to gluten, and we had like this pizzeria where we could have like these gluten-free pizza breads, so it had to be vegan too, so no cheese. And we were like, this is so cool, we have a gluten-free pizza. And we took one, and we were like, well, this is not too oily, it's okay, it's fine, we can have this once in a while. And then, like, I know a few weeks ago, before Corona hit, we were like, after going to swim with our son, we were like, we're craving a pizza, and I really don't have time or energy to make one, we're gonna get one. And we were like, how did we ever say this is not too oily, this is so oily? And we were like, this is not worth it. It wasn't like that we were stopping ourselves or not permitting ourselves to have this pizza. It was like, we noticed it just wasn't as satisfying as we remembered it to be. So it's a lot about that. It's for you. You're doing it for yourself. You don't have to follow anything, but you know where you're heading. So you know, okay, where I want to go. This is the optimal health I want to reach for myself, and I'm kind of having fun testing it out, and it will become natural at some point, because your taste will change, and you will actually love peaches a lot more than I don't know, what's your favorite sweet? And yeah, it just feels natural at some point. I mean, it feels natural until you actually exit your bubble and try to go out to restaurants or to friends. That's a little touch and go, but if you're at home, it feels totally natural. After, I mean, we're doing this since like 1.5 years, so depends on where you put the cutoff.
Yeah, it does get easier over time. And fortunately, there are starting to be some restaurants, at least here, I'm so lucky in Southern California, vegan restaurants and you know, whole food at least, or, you know, you can find those options a little more readily. But it is an issue when you're trying to eat with friends and they're like, oh, they're so hard to feed. And I think because they just don't recognize there are still so many options available. There are so many different meals you can create without Me.
That's true, but mostly when I go out to friends, I mean not to restaurants. Restaurants is actually really a tricky one, but you're in luck. I mean in California there has to be a lot of options. But if you go out to friends, mostly what I do is I say don't bother cooking for me because I have a lot of rules I follow. Don't bother, I'll bring something, and I'll bring something that everyone can have, and mostly I've got really good resonance, so it's not, people shy away if they're supposed to do it themselves because they have no idea, they don't know if they can satisfy you. It's just awkward and you're the odd one out that like just can nibble on the paprika sticks or something. And if you reframe this mindset for you're going to bring something yourself, which comes natural at some point because you're preparing your food anyway all the time. And then you bring something and it's interesting and it's new and they're curious and they try it and they say like, oh, I didn't know this could taste so good. It actually becomes this whole other social dynamic, which is not that you're sitting there being the odd one out. And that really feels really bad. And if you reframe it and do it differently, I've had positive feedback from that. So a lot of my friends actually were like, oh, that's nice. And some actually also tried some recipes for themselves or wanted to have the recipes. So it's a way of spreading it, right? Just
Exactly.
showing how good it can be.
Yeah, I think that can be really helpful to just kind of gently open people's horizons. And I love, thank you for pointing out, I wouldn't have thought to look for an app for forks over knives for recipes. That's a really good suggestion. I found at a thrift store before I even started on this like path down holistic health. I found a book by John Robbins called May All Be Fed, which was really wonderful and has a lot of great vegan recipes in it. And so that's one that I've even gotten my very carnivorous husband to. There's a couple that come out of that book now, like tamale pie that he loves to make, you know, because it's got that kind of like that rich, well-seasoned flavor. It's a little bit Mexican in style. And you don't use the cheese, you know, there's a way to work around it, even though we haven't been able to transition our taste buds. We can start bringing it in.
Well, I think a lot of tastes, and this gets a little bit philosophical. I think a lot of tastes, and I've actually been talking to a few of my clients that were each of them had some kind of story to fit this this theory. That a lot of our tastes that are in the meats or animal sector are actually wrongly wired because we're actually searching for something different. And they were like, that's true, I once ate this and this plant-based dish and I really thought it tasted like this and this. Like there is seaweed that actually tastes like bacon, for example. And you can make a lot of like beans or lentil dishes that taste really meaty. And cheese, this umami flavor from the cheese can actually be very good incorporated by different fermentation processes that have nothing to do with the milk itself. And I think fermentation is a very natural thing to do with your food, because if you don't have a fridge, which was probably like all our evolution, we didn't have a fridge, the food starts to ferment. So it's a natural thing that you eat fermented food. And we like this flavor. I think that umami flavor that comes from bacterial fermentation or also from some mushroom fermentation. And so a lot of people are just used to the taste that they have from childhood on, and that kind of fill these gaps of these other things that they might not be getting a lot of. So yeah, you can still, you don't have to transition every taste bud to something that tastes like carrot or something. You can actually find a lot of textures and a lot of taste that resembles it a lot of what you actually like. But cheese is a different story because cheese is highly addictive, and that's science. I mean, a lot of mothers know what I'm talking about because breastfeeding is very addictive for small babies. And cheese is just 10 times more as addictive because the milk protein is concentrated. So yeah, I mean, you've not been weaned at all if you are still consuming milk and cheese products, which is I mean, it's a simple way to wean your children with just milk from another species, and we're still addicted as adults. And I know it because I was addicted myself. I mean, I was like, I still know, like a few years ago, I was talking to someone who was vegan and was like, I really think that's cool that you're vegan. I'm vegetarian, and I know I think I could go vegan, but I would miss the cheese. I really love cheese, and I mean Parmesan and Gouda, and the addiction goes away. I mean, you can wean yourself as an adult from the addiction of cheese and milk, and you can still have flavorful dishes that resemble things that you like. I mean, we even have a pizza with like melted cheese on top. That's whole food plant based. So um, it's possible. So
It's a little creativity and exploration. You have to be willing
yeah,
to try some different things.
exactly.
You're not going to love everything, but that's not enough reason to not come back and try it again.
Yeah, so if you reframe it as you're going on an exploration, it gets a lot more fun because it's not about like rules or not allowing yourself to indulge on something that's tasty. It's just about finding out how can, and it's a lot about creativity. I'm sorry, I love being creative in the kitchen and finding like ways to substitute things that we don't want to miss. A lot of things actually are possible to make, and we even now make our own pizza, as I said, because it's something we didn't want to miss. So if a lot of people are actually surprised how normal we eat if we invite them and cook for them, because they're like, you're on this. And my husband said I shouldn't take this word in my mouth anymore because words are powerful, but they often say it's an extreme diet, and I totally disagree. It's not extreme at all. It's like very natural. I mean, the transition can be a little touch and go at some point. Sometimes you don't really find something that satisfies you at first, but it's all about just being loving to yourself, being forgiving to yourself if you just don't find the right thing, and it takes time. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that that really helps. Like you just have to kind of keep being kind to yourself and keep celebrating that you're making progress and that you're trying different things. And it might be something that sticks, it might be a short-term, exploration, but you discover at the same time that you can take back that control. You can break out of this what we've been fed about how food has to be and the way people should eat. And you know, um, people say you can't get enough protein if you go plant-based or other things like that. And raising your son, you've probably perhaps encountered some people who are skeptical. How do you help people kind of prepare to meet that conversation when other people are telling them that's really extreme?
Well, I mean, you stated the important word yourself already, empowerment. I mean, it's about having the right mindset, and you're really empowering yourself with knowledge. And if you're really rock solid about the foundations, if you're really rock solid on the science, you cannot be made uncertain by someone who says you can't raise your child like that. And I go, yes, you can. There's been so many before us that have actually raised children and grandchildren on this diet. So I know it's possible. I mean, it's just a mathematical thing, right? Like this, if you have to prove something, you have to go a long length to do it. But to disprove something, you just need one. And so if they say it's not possible, you just need one counterexample. It's that easy. And then you can say it is possible. I mean, you can do it wrong. Yes, you can do it wrong. It's a lot harder to do whole food plant-based wrong than vegan. That's for certain, because whole food plant-based is just packed with nutrient-dense food. It's very hard to not get every nutrient you need on this kind of diet. You would have to be very one-sided. So a lot of the arguments that I hear on a regular basis are actually arguments that come from the food lobby, right? They're trying to still ingrain us with the status quo about you need milk for strong bones, even though that's been disproven like years ago. And they all pin it down to this one nutrient called calcium, which you can get like literally everywhere else. I don't think that there is like a real, if you get enough calories, and you're not like in some weird third world country where you have like you struggle to get enough calories, I don't think there is a real calcium deficiency here in the Western world. It's a lot about magnesium deficiency. It's a lot about vitamin D. That's something that's for our bones more important than the calcium. And it's a lot about acidification. So you have like these other factors that are way bigger, and some are even related to milk. I mean, you get acidification if you drink too much milk. It's like the logic is like so off, but if you talk to people, it's like the foundation is this logic because they've been hearing it all of your life. So you're like in this space where you have to actually try to prove something, which is, as I said, hard to do. So that's why I try to give this foundation and reshift their minds to know the science, know where it comes from, because a lot of these arguments are not scientific based. They're just food lobby. They're just like marketing from the food lobby. And if you know that, at least for yourself, you can be quite rock solid. You don't have to be like always stressing about all these people who are telling you your child won't grow up properly or so yeah. That's basically my philosophy. Just be rock solid on the science, and there is a lot of science to back this up, and know where the arguments from the other side come from. So you just don't block it off, but embrace it and say, where does this come from? Why do people say you need milk for strong bones? Where does it come from? Well, it comes from the milk lobby. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think we've been so fortunate recently to have more and more people stepping forward, like top athletes who are saying, I am vegan or I'm whole food plant-based. I don't need to bulk up on animal protein in order to, win, which I think is really great. And so that's such a great point. Thank you for demonstrating that, like even growing through childhood during our big growing phases, it's all about getting the full suite of nutrients, the minerals that we need. And getting variety, not limiting ourselves to very restricted, like, limited diet. The more we can enhance our palate and bring in, a variety of foods, then we're going to get everything that we need.
Yeah. Eat like the rainbow, right? But if it's the basis of your plate, it's just natural. You get them. And so you can do vegan you can do really wrong, because you can have like a white flour pasta with like a vegan cheese sauce and get almost no nutrients in it. But if you do it whole food plant-based, you get like rice pasta dish with I don't know, a butternut creamy sauce, which is almost, I mean, it's very similar, but you get like this whole load of nutrients, which you on the other side don't have. Of course, you can say, well, vegan is not good. But if your dish is out of these highly processed things, and then you have a little bit of meat, you say, well, the meat is the most nutrient rich of this. Of course, it's a bad idea to leave it away. But it's actually, if you look at it, it's not the best source of all nutrients. It can go home if you compare it to plant-based things. And that's even in iron and protein. And I was surprised to say that I saw this table from Dr. Campbell in his book, and he actually did the math to show that the nutrients are not comparable. I mean, the plant-based food wins in almost every category except cholesterol. and it wasn't a very exotic mix. I mean, you would say, well, if you compare superfoods to meat, of course, but it was like potatoes, spinach, garbanzo beans, and tomatoes. I think it wasn't uncommon food. It was very, very normal, very cheap food. So yeah, you get all the nutrients, you get all the protein, you get all the iron. The only thing, vitamin B12 is of course something you have to supplement, because our relationship to bacteria has changed. So that's a bacterial thing, not a plant-based thing. It's also not a meat thing. So it's not an animal byproduct or anything. It's a bacterial thing. And since we know that bacteria cause disease, we have distanced ourselves from bacteria, and we don't get like a lot of bacteria anymore in our environment, which is a good thing because we don't get tuberculosis or anything on a regular basis. But we also don't really get enough vitamin B12 anymore from the natural sources we would have had. And we don't get the bacteria to go with the gut flora that would maybe also supplement us in a natural way. So I think that's the argument with the vitamin B12. If you have to supplement yourself, you're not a natural, you're not eating naturally, is sadly, it's not true because we're not natural anymore. So yeah, I do supplement myself with vitamin B12, but that's like the only thing we supplement. But a lot of people are very anxious about how complicated this whole system is. And I mean, a lot of people are aware that going vegan is the solution, right? They're just too anxious to do it because they don't think they can do it. And so I'm actually talking a lot of to people who actually want to do this for our planet, for themselves, for their children, for their grandchildren, and really are afraid that they might not be healthy or that they can't do it because it's too complicated. And it's very empowering to say, well, it's not complicated. If you follow some simple rules, it's actually quite easy, and you'll be surprised how easy it is. So yeah, going vegan can be complicated. Going whole food, plant-based, not so much.
Awesome. And you mentioned some great resources, and I'll get the book information because I haven't looked into the work of Dr. Campbell, but I certainly am familiar with Dr. Esselstyn. So I'll share those resources with people so it's easy for them to learn more about the difference between whole food, plant-based, and vegan, because sometimes we just kind of paint with a broad brush. Once it's vegetarian, it's complicated and it's, extreme. So, and the Forks Over Knives app, I'm going to check that out myself.
Yeah, so it's a great resource. I mean, it's not perfect. I adapt some of the recipes because the sugar-free part is not perfectly executed for my taste, because I only sweeten with fruits, not with like they use what's it called, syrup from the tree.
Yeah, maple syrup.
Maple syrup, exactly. Yeah. And I don't use that, so I adapt a lot of the sweet stuff for me, but it's a great resource for like the main dishes and the sweet stuff if you're familiar with a little swap-a-doodle.
I love it, and bring a little creativity back into the kitchen, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I don't really use the app anymore. I've been using it heavily at the beginning, but now I've become so comfortable with creating these kind of things that I do a lot like on my own. And my husband was like, I'm never gonna be able to cook like I used to before, and now he's starting to do his own dishes as well. So it took a little time, but you can also become an expert cook in whole food, plant-based. It's not different than your other cooking. It's just you have to get used to it. It's not more complicated. You don't have to be a sous chef or anything to do it. So yeah.
And I thank you, because I feel like you've made it more approachable, and that was what I really wanted to kind of share with people, is that it's not something to be really overwhelmed by the concept of. You can start trying it on, be forgiving with yourself, and just keep coming back to it if you feel like it's something that you want to explore.
Yeah.
Hooray! Well, and I will share a link to Julia's website. Eathappygolucky.com is the English version. She's been maintaining currently in the midst of her doctoral thesis. Her German site a little bit better, but if you want to check that out, but I'll share all the resources that she mentioned as well in the notes below this video. So all of that is available. Thank you so much for your time in the middle of your day. I appreciate it. And
I love talking about it. It's my passion.